Welcome to the yearly recap of Skylords Reborn. In this video, we want to bring you up to speed with everything that happened in the past year, which in this case is 2021. Before we start though, we first quickly want to introduce ourselves, and while I'm at it, I guess I'll start with myself. I'm Stina, hi. I'm the project lead, and in Skylords Reborn I take care of a lot of development things and also a lot of administrative things alongside with Ladadus.
Hello guys, I'm Lada. I'm also a project lead for Skylords Reborn and I also actively develop for it.
Hey everyone, I'm Majora. I'm the community manager and I'm in charge of the communication between you guys and the development team. We did quite a lot of patches this year. Zina will tell you a bit more about it.
Right. So, as for major patches this year, we had 5 patches in total, and you could say the first major patch we had was on 18th December 2020, which was essentially just our release date. For the past 5 years prior to that, we've mainly just been working on bringing this game back as closely to the original as possible, and we think we did quite a good job at that. The servers have been quite stable, and there were not a lot of bugs anymore, and I think most people were able to just get the dose of nostalgia and enjoy the game again as they did in the past. However, after release, we also wanted to bring a bit of new light into Skylords Reborn and just reignite the flame. That's why we did balance patches, and we focused a lot on 1v1 PvP and tier 4 PvE this year, and we put a lot of special focus on Pure Frost. Pure Frost was reworked quite a bit, and there are not necessarily a lot of new cards, but in Pure Frost, lots of cards which were previously bad, for example Dreadnought or Winter Witch, are now actually pretty good, and it's really like a new faction you can play in rPvE and PvE, and it's a viable choice in general. After the balance patches, we also did the anniversary patch, which is basically 1 year after release, and there we added new cards, new systems, which we will go over in a bit. But first, we want to tell you a bit more about the community, because you have to keep in mind that this is a community project, and we do all of this in our free time. But since we don't do it alone, we get a lot of help from the lovely community, which Majora can tell you a bit about.
Yeah, definitely. So basically we have the team behind Skylords Reborn working on the game because we want them to focus as much as possible. We saw that there was a lack of communication in the beginning, and because of that we basically put me for the community updates, which is every 3 weeks we give you a little update about everything that's happening behind the scenes, bring you up to speed on what's coming, what we adjusted, what we patched. And yeah, we basically try to capture as much feedback from you guys to make the game the best it can be. We had a feedback survey in the summer, more than 1,000 replies on it, and we really try to use that information to adjust the game in areas that you find the most important. We also involve you quite a bit in the design. We have specific faction designers and stuff, but we also have a task group for PvP and PvE with some of the more active players that know a lot about the game. We ask them for opinions on card designs, on balance changes. So everyone, it's really a community project in that sense. We also depend on you for voice acting for the new cards, which will be implemented very soon. And we also ask you for voting. We had your votes on new card names, we had your votes for the new promo, what faction the next rPvE faction should be, and also on the expansion symbol. So yeah, lots of community involvement, also for the new content. And yeah, speaking of new content, Lara, maybe you can dive a bit into it.
Yeah, thanks. So for the new content, one thing we've worked on this year was creating a special effect editor. With this tool that anyone can use, you can pretty much edit special effects of BattleForge, and this especially important for spells, but it can also be important for units or buildings, and it really helps us create more unique looking cards in the future. Anyone can download this and improve it. It's actually open source. You can find a link in it in the description of this video. Next to it, we also worked on booster history. It was quite often a requested feature. How can I see the history of all of the boosters I've opened? Yeah, you can do that now. We've also worked on rebalancing 1 versus 1 maps. especially on the layouts of some of them to reduce offensive walling. But we also changed the layout of the maps themselves to reduce cliffing or to support the playstyles of different factions. We also introduced spectator maps, which is especially important for events and tournaments. Talking about tournaments, we have held, well, actually over 20 PvE and PvP events this year. This includes both tournaments held officially by us, but also community events held by you guys, which we've sponsored. And this really helped, engage the community more and make the entire community feel more alive. Next to it, we also did a lot of minor improvements and fixes, not only to the server, making it a lot more stable than it was pre-release, but also we also improved the map editor, and we also added inventory filtering, which means you can now search for example, all the promontory inventory or cards that have certain charges, and all of this filtering is also applicable to the marketplace. Lastly, we also did a lot of improvements to the description of cards and explaining their mechanics. And a fan favorite of mine is how we changed Mountaineer to visualize its ammo regeneration, which is really helpful to improve the predictability of the unit. And of course, next to this, we did a lot more, and this can all be read in our community updates that Majora mentioned that we've written throughout the year. But next to this, we've also added a lot of content in the anniversary patch, which Zena can tell you more about.
Right. Okay. We essentially put a lot of focus on new cards of this anniversary patch and new systems, but we first want to go into the new cards. What you see on screen is not necessarily a new card, but it's a redesign for the MI faction. Because back when the game was a bit older, there was only one MI card, which was the MI faction, the MI Phantom, and we redesigned it because we wanted to essentially build a new basis for future MI cards. That's why you can also see a new passive for the card, which is the elusive passive, which essentially reduces the duration of CC by 10%. So for example, if the card would be frozen for 20 seconds, it's now frozen for 18 seconds, and so on. We also didn't want her to be alone. That's why we have the MI Paladins.
The MI Paladins is finally the first new actual MI card we add to the game. It shares the same passive ability as the Phantom. It's a very interesting card because it can be played in both PvP and PvE. In PvE, you can make all kinds of cool combos with its ability because it reflects all the damage, 100% of the damage to surrounding enemies. So you can use stuff like fall play and cards like that. And in PvP, it's also a very cheap M unit, so we expected to see lots of play.
Yeah, like as a small melee squad, it can really add a lot of, counters in PvP, so you can replace this with Ghost Spears, which was the previous M counter. And as Majora said, you can combine this with Nest Surprise or actually also many other cards. It's really a lot of flexibility here, and you can probably get very creative with this ability because, as it says on the screen, the damage is 100% reflected, which I think is pretty cool, to be honest.
It's a really cool effect, yeah.
Yeah. But we didn't only focus on MI cards, we also added a new Pure Frost card. So in our past balance patches, Pure Frost received a lot of updates, which included a lot of reworks for tier 4 cards like Dreadnought or Battleship or Winter Witch. And with these updates, we added a lot of new synergies with shieldings. And in the past, Pure Frost did not have too many opportunities to grant shields in tier 4, aside from Winter Witch, and the Winter Witch is quite a slow unit. So we added this card to essentially complement the current tier 4 of Pure Frost. And the Code of Protection is essentially a massive ice shield which enables more synergies and allows you to also get more sustain without splashing to nature, because previously you had to splash to nature to get any sort of healings. And it's just way more flexible now.
And as Zena mentioned, we did a lot of adjustment to the current cards in the game from Frost, and Code of Protection is like the icing on the cake that we needed to make the faction viable.
Yeah, but it's really fun and also really viable. Especially in rPvE, you can get really good clear times.
And it looks really beautiful.
Yeah, and it does look really beautiful. But yeah, we have MI, we have Frost, what is next? I'm not sure. What do you think, Majora?
We're moving to a bit more warmer cards. We're
Oh, yeah,
moving to
what's-
the scorching wastelands of the bandits.
Yeah, it's getting kind of hot in here.
It's getting kind of hot in here,
It's
yeah.
getting kind of hot, but here you can see the new loading screen artwork we have in game. On the artwork you can see 3 cards we plan to add in the upcoming patches, 2 of which we have already added. In the bottom left you can see a hot minefield, which if you trample on, you get, bad things happen. On the right, bad things happen. On the right you can see a grumpy old man, which holds a gun, which is the bandit sniper. And on the left you can see the mighty wasteland wing, which is very mighty and very evil and very scary.
It's a bit of a teaser, because it's not currently in the game yet at the filming of this video, but we hope to add him soon.
Yeah, soon TM.
Soon TM.
Okay, but the sniper and the minefield are already in the game. This is what they look like. The minefield is essentially just 4 minefields in a row. They are obviously less weak than the individual mine, but they provide a lot of flexibility in terms of how you use them. You can zone enemies a lot, you can... What else? You can do a lot of damage with them actually. And they're technically more geared towards PvP, because these are tier 2 cards, and Bandit previously had a lot of issues with tier 2 and PvP. And for example, the Bandit Minefield should allow you to defend things more easily. The Bandit Sniper should allow you to essentially snipe units without getting too close. And it's just generally a lot more flexibility. You can obviously use these units in PvE as well. And yeah.
They're just very strong units overall, and well, a spell obviously. Basically, bandits were pretty bad in PvP. They had a lot of issues. They lacked a ranged M counter that was good enough to see play, and they also didn't have any form of CC. Fire, of course, has the same issue, but they had wildfire that could kind of push units away from the wells, because the wildfire did so much damage that you had to move. Bandit Minefield is a bit similar in that regard. It used to have M knockback, but we changed that because that was way too overpowered. But even with S knockback and a decent damage output, it will really allow you to play a bit more defensively, because previously Bandits was only offense. And now you have 2 great tools to really get into that PvP meta.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. But Bandits also got some goodies in the tier 4 department for PvE. Here we have the Banzerlord, which is a mighty commander, which is intended to support the late game for the bandits. On the right you can also see his lovely birds, which either deal damage or heal health points based on their affinity. And in general, he's a very, how should you say, commander-like card. He basically goes first, summons birds, then commands his birds to fly into the enemy or to the allies to heal them or to damage the enemies. And it's really fun to play with the card. You have to imagine if you have like 5 of these, you can just summon 15 birds. And it's just so cool.
And like I mentioned in the beginning, we worked together with the community for the voice acting, and we really wanted to go for a character here that is really sinister, really creepy, but at the same time really caring towards his birds. We really like the design, and we hope you like too.
Yep. To be fair, the birds are very cute though, so...
Birds are very cute, but they tend to explode.
Which is not a bad thing.
True. Better player at heart.
But yeah, that's it for the new cards. Alongside the new cards, we mentioned before that we added new systems. And we'll start with the avatar system, which we added.
Speaking of new things, if you create a new character when you begin your first Skylords Reborn career, you get a selection of a couple of avatars that after that are not available anymore. You're still allowed to change your avatar by the cards that you currently have. There are special avatars that are only available in the loading screen. We decided that was a bit of a waste, so we added a new cosmetic feature. Here you can find all the old avatars that you were only able to select once, and you can purchase them with gold. And you can also collect them, so it's like a portfolio, which lets you freely swap between the avatars that you purchased already. It's a really nice little feature that can for the collectors among us. If you completed all the cards, you can now collect all the profile pictures. Also have another new feature.
Yeah, next up we have Reforging. So with this feature, you can now finally burn or get rid of all of your unneeded cards. the main idea with this reforging is to bring the price of cheap and expensive cards closer together, so it's more viable for new players to get their hands on more expensive or the more expensive and better cards. And you can also get rid of many unwanted cards in your inventory. The idea with this is you drop in 4 cards, you can reforge them into a new one, and the similar the cards are that you put in, the higher the rarity output is. And the color of the cards you get out is influenced by the colors of the cards you put in. And if you add cards that exceed an ultra rare percentage of 100%, then this excess is transformed into a new currency we've added called Forge Shards. And these Forge Shards are a new untradeable currency specifically for the reforging system, which you can use to exchange them for boosters actually. So you'll never waste cards by dragging them in and burning them up for new cards. It's a nice feature because it adds our very first card sync, but it's also a gold sync because it costs gold to reforge the cards. And in just about 1.5 weeks of having added this system to the game, already 750,000 cards have been burned, which is way more than I have anticipated. But we are happy with the results it has done thus far to the game, and we look forward to see what it does in the future. Of course, with all of these card changes, people can now more easily get expensive cards, which means their prices are also way different. And the marketplace needs some time to adjust, but we're keeping an eye out on its impact on the game and the marketplace, and we're changing settings accordingly, so it keeps on having the effect that we wish it to have. But yeah, I mean, you can have all of these cards, but there's actually a new game mode where you can use them in.
What, a new game mode?
Yeah, ooh.
Damn, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, this is the new Fire rPvE game mode, which is short for Fire Random rPvE. You can, on the world map, find these maps on the bottom right. This is like the random PvE map section. And there you previously could only play against bandits or twilights or lost souls, for example. But now you can also play against the mighty fire units. A lot of effort went into this one actually, because we carefully designed each unit. And each unit in this mode also tries to use their ability. For example, let's say, what units do we have? We have the Juggernauts, the Warlock, which can buff enemies, or the buff units. They have the Virtuoso, which can like make its trumpet. You have the Thunderer, which can destroy buildings, and so on. And all the bosses also have new special skins, and they kind of look like promos now, which is cool. And yeah, it just feels very carefully put together. Obviously, the balancing is not perfect yet because it's just the first iteration, but we're still closely monitoring the win rates, loss rates, to see if it's similar to the old game modes. But we're already thinking about, for example, adding a new disenchant building to just allow these fire units to keep attacking and attacking and attacking, which is what they like to do a lot. But yeah, this Fire rPvE is not the only game mode we plan to add in the future, because there will be also future patches which add other things.
Like we mentioned before, the Wasteland Wing is not yet in the game, but we're hoping to add them in the future. And there are also a couple of other cards that we have in mind. A couple are from the voting from the Patreon page, so more Ami cards, more Frost cards. I think this was the last Bandit card, but we're also looking to add more new cards in general in 2022.
Yeah, right, and also from this point on forward. We also want to add new factions to rPvE besides the Fire faction. The goal is eventually to add all 4 factions to the rPvE game mode, but next we go with the Nature faction, because there was a vote about this and people could choose either Nature or Frost, and we all decided for the Nature faction.
Yeah, next up we also worked a bit on new game modes and maps. One game mode we've been working on for quite a while actually is a defensive rPvE, which is rPvE but then defensive. Instead of attacking, you defend, and usually people do this with buildings. And we've also been hard at work on new campaign maps. We've also been working on one specifically, and looking forward to see how that moves forward.
Yeah, as you heard before, we also rebalanced the 1v1 maps. We did the same for 2v2 maps. They're now on the test server, and they're still in the testing phase, so we still need your feedback there to see if they're better now or maybe even worse. We never know. But yeah, there's lots of things coming in the future. It's gonna be great in 2022, because 2021 was also very fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We also wrote a lot of documents in the past year. To start with, basically, like Zina said, when the game released, it was trying to be an exact copy of the game you remember from back in the day. But after that, we wanted to improve upon it, so we wrote the design philosophy on areas, how we feel about the game, what we think can go better, and we wrote it out in a document to give a bit of a guideline to both ourselves and the community to know what to expect. We did the same for card rarities. When should a card be ultra rare? When should it be uncommon? How are we going to go forward with our new cards? We had 2 deep dive documents that really go into a specific faction, in this case Pure Frost and Bandits. Look at what make the faction tick, what are the weaknesses, how can we improve upon it. They're really interesting reads if you like the faction or if you like game design in general. Then we also had 2 behind the scenes documents. One goes into the filtering option that Lara mentioned earlier. What can you do with the option? What was changed according to the original filtering? We also have a document that goes into the adding of a specific PvP card, in this case Minefield, because a lot goes into the balance of that. Like we mentioned before, first it had M knockback, we had to adjust the cost of it. Yeah, it's a really interesting read if you want to know how much balancing thoughts go into a card. And speaking of balance, there's also a PvP guide that Radical X and Hero, I believe, wrote. It's a really long read. It's like 10,000 words, I believe. But it really goes into all the 16 factions you can play in PvP and how you can play better.
Yeah, I think new players have a way easier time now just to get started with PvP and to understand what's actually happening, because it's sometimes a bit, I guess, intransparent to new players how exactly they lost or what exactly is wrong with the decks. That's why we also have the free PvP decks now, for example, which allow you to choose a fully upgraded, fully charged deck every day, or basically 2 decks every day, and you can just switch those decks, you can play around with all these different factions, then you can read a guide. How can I actually play this deck? What should I watch out for in tier 1, in tier 2, and so on. I think for new players it's been easier than ever to just get started with PvP. It's also been way more balanced than ever, so you can just really play anything and then just try to win, because it's really about the skill in PvP, I hope. Or at least that's how it's supposed to be.
Play Shadow, of course.
Yeah, play Shadow. Okay, but yeah, that was it for the yearly recap of Skylords Reborn. By the way, in this last slide, you might be able to find a very, very hidden code. We won't tell you where it is, but shh. Okay. But yeah, we'd like to thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you in the Forge. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.